Hey there, Vanessa the Salty Knitter here, and I believe I have just found my Goldilocks sock pattern. So, um, the first sock I did was cuff down, and I wasn't happy with it. I don't like the way um, the ribbing is. I don't like having the stripes jog. My mattress stitch is really bad. Mind you, if you think that's bad, wait until you see my Kitchener stitch. Um, yeah, it's not very good either. But all that aside, and yes, I have shaved my legs for this. I can't do much about the fact that they're whiter than a bald headed farmer when he takes his hat off. But, okay, so I also don't like this here. You see how it's got a bit of a fold there? I believe that as you're wearing it, that sock would be drifting down into your shoe. Yeah, there's a little bit of a hole to the side. That's not a big deal. Um, and I'm just not happy with the heel. Okay? So that was sock 1. So sock 2 was knitted toe up. And I am definitely happier with this sock. So what I did was I knitted toe up, and I'm in the process of hand knitting the ribbing, as you can see. Okay, it's almost done, and then I can finally have my Chow Goo knitting needles back, which will make me happy. So if I try this sock on carefully, so I'm a lot happier with it. I'm not so happy with this, and the heel is small. It's not really the size a heel should be, but it's definitely a wearable sock, and appearance wise, I'm cool with it, right? Okay, so gently take this one off. So now this is a sock. So the cuff is knitted in a coordinating solid. So there's no worry over stripe joggings, like the stripes jogging across the seam. So there is one small seam, but it's only like a 1-inch cuff, so it's not a big deal. And instead of doing a short row heel, I've done a heel flap with a gusset. And it makes for a much roomier heel. You can see just how much higher the heel comes up on my foot, like it almost, my ankle bone is there, so it's much closer than a short row heel gets. Okay, so this is a cuff down sock, and I am using a contrast yarn for my cuff. I will be knitting the main part of the sock in this self-striping yarn. The other thing I want to mention, okay, so I've cast on already, and I've knit my first row. So when I E-wrap cast on, I usually start with the carriage on the right before I knit my first row, and I start my row count there. But the thing is, when you knit your ribbing flat, but then you're going to join it for circular, your circular knitting, you want to have it going in a clockwise direction. It just makes it a lot easier when you're doing your Kitchener stitch at your toe at the end if the sock has been knit clockwise. And it's just, most patterns are based on the assumption that when you knit in the round, you're knitting clockwise. So in order to have your yarn on the proper side for knitting clockwise, you have to end your ribbing with the carriage on the left, because then you're going to bring all your ribber stitches up onto your main bed, and some of them are like at least in a 2x2 industrial rib, some of those needles on the main bed, they're going to have 2 stitches. I have selvage stitches at the end that need to be decreased off. So I need to knit 1 row before I take my flat ribbing off and rehang it. So your ribbing ends with the carriage on the left, so that you knit that last 1 row where it's just like straight stockinette on your main bed, and end with your carriage on the right. And then that way, when you put this, rehang this piece of ribbing in your circular formation, you will be all set up to knit clockwise. Okay? So with that said, let's get started. I'm just doing a 1-inch rib before I rehang and knit the rest of my leg in my striped yarn, circular. So I get, with this yarn, I get 12 rows per inch. So basically I'm going to knit 12 rows from here. And like I said, make sure I end on the left. Okay. I've made sure that my yarn is not caught in my cast on comb or on any gate pegs or anything. So I'm going to pull up the tension. Okay, for my first row. Okay, and I'm going to make sure that everything has knit off correctly, especially these end needles, okay? And I'm going to be watching that all the way through. Oh, and the other thing is, my tension right now is set to my knitting tension. This is why I prefer an E-wrap cast on, is because you start as you mean to finish, and I don't have to worry about completely screwing it up by forgetting to change a machine setting, right? Okay, so now I need my double-eyed needle, and then I will transfer all my stitches. So if you haven't seen any of my other sock videos, for transferring the rib, you use this double-eyed needle. Okay, and with a 2x2 rib, if you look, you think, okay, well, wait a minute. You're going to transfer all your ribber bed stitches up to your main bed, but you only have 1 empty needle. And the answer is, of course, on some of these needles, I'm going to double up my stitches. Now, it's completely up to you whether you want to double up your first stitch and then your second stitch goes on the empty needle, or you want to do your needle, your first rib stitch to your empty needle, and so on and so forth all the way across. I think the most important thing is you probably don't want to do it in your selvage, because that one is going to be cast off. Not cast off, it's going to be decreased away. And you want to stay consistent all the way across the bed. Now, the other thing you're probably thinking is, or you might be thinking, if you've attempted this before anyways, is my needles don't line up, right? Like they're at an angle. So before I start, just to make it easier on myself, I'm going to change my ribber bed, like the pitch. I'm going from half pitch to full pitch. so that way my needles are directly across from each other. It just makes it a lot easier. So basically all you do is you put one eye on the hook of your river bed needle, pull it up so the stitch is past the latch, and then pull it back down and the latch should close over your needle, okay? And then you just slide your needle down until it grabs your main bed needle that you're transferring your stitch to. You pop it on and you pull it back. That's it. That's all you do. So again, you pull up, pull down, bring your needle around and put it on the needle. Okay? So I think this is probably a good point for me to stop talking, because when I edit this video, I am going to I'm going to speed it up. Okay, that's all my river bed stitches transferred to my main bed now. So I have to do one pass to the right before I can start rehanging my stitches for circular. Okay, you want to make sure all of your river bed needles are pushed down so that you don't accidentally knit one as you're going across. Alternatively, you could also put your river carriage to hold position, and that will work as well. Okay, so across we go. And now we're ready for the fun part. We're going to rehang our stitches. So it doesn't matter if you have your seam on the left side or the right side. You can do either way. The only thing is, actually no, there is no only thing. Oh, yes, there is. If you decide that you want to have your seam on the left side of your bed, you have to get your carriage over there without knitting. I use a circular needle to rehang my stitches, and I take them completely off because I always feel like I have to have it centered on the bed. There's a lot of ways to take your knitting off the bed and rehang it. Waste yarn is the most common. I have had little luck with rehanging stitches from waste yarn, but that's one way to do it. There's also such a thing as a garter bar. Okay, so I'm ready to transfer my ribbing to a circular needle. This is not my favorite circular needle. It's an Addy Express, and I cannot, even though I've tried with hot water and heat, I cannot get the coil out of the cord. But anyways, it'll work for this. So I've removed my cast on comb and replaced it with some individual claw weights so that I have some flexibility. So I have these handy in case I drop a stitch so I can retrieve it, but let's try not to drop any. So the method I have found works the best for me is I use my one eye tool to kind of hold the stitch stable, and then I go down just under the hook into the stitch, and I can usually do 3 to 4 before I have to start taking these stitches off the machine. Okay, so see, I have 3 stitches on there, so I just pull my hook forward until the stitch is behind the latch and pull it back. Same. Okay, these Addi Express needles are very slippery, so you want to make sure you use your finger to hold the stitches that are already on your needle. Okay, use my single prong transfer tool to pull the stitch ahead. And you just continue across like that until all of your stitches are on your circular needle. Okay, one thing I forgot, I actually have 2 extra stitches on this because I haven't decreased them away yet. So I pulled out the extra on each bed. And I'm just gonna slide these stitches along. Okay. So the other thing, if you remember, when I picked the stitches up, I took my needle in this way, right? So that means that if I take my transfer tool, right, and go up from this side, then I won't be twisting the stitch. If I go in from this side and take it off my needle and rehang it, then I will be twisting the stitch. So it's really important to remember which direction your stitches went on your needle so you don't twist them as you're putting them back on the, as you're rehanging them. So again, bring my transfer tool in from the back, and I can either wait until I've put the stitch on my needle before I take it, like my knitting machine needle, before I take it off my circular, or I can take it off while it's on the transfer tool. To each their own, and I probably do a combination of both. Okay, and you just go along like that and kind of take your time. And you have to kind of keep an eye on the stitches you've already transferred as you go across so that you don't pull them off the machine. Okay, once I have a few more stitches, I'm going to hang a weight, and that will help, but it's still, you don't want to you just have to take care while you're doing it, that's all. Okay, so notice that I have my claw weights hung towards the bottom of my knitting, and that is because I have learned the hard way that you can't bring your rubber bed up if your weights are in the way. So, and there are a lot of things that I like about the brother bed over the Singer, or the brother machine over my Singer. The lack of space between the two beds is not one of them. Like, is this just a crappy weight? Get in there. Maybe it's just a crap weight. Let me grab another one. It just isn't. So sometimes your needles get cockeyed, and if you take a minute, you can straighten them out, and then they work better. Okay, so let's see if this one, well, it's a little better. Okay, so the next part is the harder part, and that is because you get constricted for space for the next part. So I'm just going to kind of use the cord on the circular needle to help me keep this needle up out of the way, because now I have to bring my rubber bed up so that I can start putting stitches on the rubber bed needles. And it is harder, but it's harder whether you do it first or do it second. I don't know. That's up to you. I find that doing the rubber bed first and then switching to the main bed isn't really great either. So do I want to go? I don't know. I'm going to start there and just change it as I go, as I need to. So again, I still have to keep in mind which direction my stitches are in. So I still have to come in from this back side to move the stitch onto my transfer tool. Okay, and I don't really push those needles back down until I'm further away from them. So something I was thinking as I was doing the main bed is I wonder if the fact that I'm left-handed creates a problem for the majority of people who are right-handed when they see my videos. So anyways, that's something to keep in mind. I am a lefty, so some stuff may look really backwards. And if it doesn't feel right, I guess try reversing it. Sorry. That's not. You have to watch out split stitches as you go. I'm not pulling these down all the way, just kind of a little bit. I think I'm going to do one more stitch and then I'm going to add weight. Okay. So I've reached up in between the leads and I'm pulling the fabric down as I bring the needles down. Because remember, you don't want to let those, if your loops get in behind the latches, then you're going to have a problem. You're going to drop a stitch when you pull the needles down. So I'm really pulling down all the way, just a little bit, mainly because my circular needle is in the way. Okay, and I'll hold it. Make sure you see that, in fact, not all. Okay, there we go, I got something in there. Okay. Okay, so what I was saying before I dropped a stitch and my dog decided to get bossy was you're on a circular needle. If you are not comfortable rehanging your stitches, moving from the right of the bed to the left of the bed, pull your circular needle through and try it going in the other direction. Now, honestly, take a big sigh of relief once you've made it to this point, because this is kind of a big deal. Rehanging ribbing is probably one of the hardest things to do, because the ribbing, by its nature, it's stretchy, so it wants to contract as you're rehanging it. So you kind of have to stretch it as you go, and it's not easy. So, you know, if you've made it this far, congratulations, you've earned it. Okay, so I'm reaching up between the beds. You're probably looking at the top of my head, and I'm rehanging the stitches. I'm making sure that nothing has gone below the latches before I pull them down. And I'm going to bring my beds together. Okay? And we're going to set up for circular knitting. So on the brother, it's different on the Singer, but on the brother, so my tension is 5. Wow, I've got some dust going on here. And I'm going to push in this part button. So I have to push it in straight because this one catches if I don't. Okay, so that part button is pushed in. This lever stays on the end. And we stay on normal knitting, okay? So that means that the main bed is not going to knit on passes from the right to the left, because we're going counterclockwise, or Jesus, Vanessa, we're going clockwise. So we don't want to knit, we want to, when we're moving to the left, we want to knit at the ribber, not the knit bed, okay? So that said, for the ribber, anyways, my tensions are the same because I did my tension swatch. So I know that this is going to give me a balanced tension for my circular knitting. So both of these levers are set to the N. This stays at the N. This stays at the R. These dials here stay in the center, or they're small tick, not the big scatter ticks. This lever we put to PR. What is on my machine? Whew, dust. Okay, and that's that. That's the settings. Okay, so we can knit circular now. Okay, now row counter. We're going to take that back to 0. And so I know that I'm going to be rehanging some weights here. So this first row is going to count as our first row. It's not a freebie. I count all the rows. And I want a 4-inch ankle for my sock. Okay, so what that means, there we go. The weight was hung up on the table underneath. So I get 12 stitches per inch, or 12 rows per inch, and I want a 4-inch ankle. So that means 48 rows, okay? The thing you always have to remember, though, when you are knitting circular on your knitting machine, is that each circular row is 2 carriage passes. So to get 48 rows on my row counter, it's going to read 98, okay? So, anyways, first pass, if I've done everything right, only the ribber bed knits, right? And that's what we've got. This first little bit really sucks because I can't reach the ribbing very well from the bottom of the bed, so it's hard to keep the weights. Anyways, okay, so there we go. We knit the top. And I'm just going to keep going like that until I've reached 96 rows. And then I will come back. Okay. So I have my 96 rows according to my counter. And now is when we're going to get ready to start our heel. Okay. The heel starts with the carriage on the left. So even though I have my 96 rows, I'm going to do one more row just on the riverbed to get me to where my carriage is on the left. And if I said right the first time, or then I meant the other right, or actually the left. So I'm going to take my striped thread out of the machine and just put it, there's a thread holder on the side. So I'm just going to put it in there. I am going to drop my bed, my rubber bed, that is. Okay, and I'm also going to change back to the regular sinker instead of the connecting arm. Okay, so I have my regular sinker plate on. I don't remember for sure, which I'm pretty sure when I reconnect my ribber, it'll be on the right hand side. So I'm just going to move that over there for now. It needs to be out of the way anyways. So the heel I'm doing in the plain blue yarn, same as the cuff. So I have that threaded. And okay, so settings. We're going to be doing slip stitch for this heel. God, someday if they would make pants that would just stay up, I would be so happy. Of course, I could get off my arse and sew them too. Okay, so I'm changing the dial. Actually, I'm going to shoot you over a little so you can see. So I've changed the dial to KC2. And I'm going to push in both part buttons. So what I understand from the instruction manual, KC1 always knits the last two needles. KC2 leaves the last two needles in whatever pattern you're using. Now, I'm not really using a pattern, but I want to select what happens to my end two needles, okay? So we'll put you back over top here. Give you a good front row seat. As usual, I'm trying to leave not too much interesting in the bottom third of the screen, because that seems to be where YouTube always puts any captions or whatever. So I'm resetting my row counter to 0. I have my machine set to slip, I hope. Anyway, we'll find out if I did it wrong. So needles left in the B position will slip. They're not going to knit. The only needles that will knit is needles moved into the D position. And that said, I am going to use my every other needle pusher to pull these needles forward to D. So it's marked on the bed, both sides of the bed, but you can also tell because there's like a metal tab here and a metal tab here, and the D position needles have to go between those two. So only the D position needles will knit, okay? And this is what we do for our left to right pass. So this counts as like row 1. If it was a hand knitting pattern, it would be row 1. Okay, so that first needle, I'm just going to hang that stitch over it. And I wish I had one more clothes peg just to make a little more weight on this thread. Anyway, I do. Here we go. Okay, so I don't think this is as much of an issue if you don't do a color change, but I did, so it is a problem. Just for that first slipped stitch. So I don't know, maybe I should have done my last row on the river. With the same thread as the heel, but then you would have an extra stripe across your toe. So, which I didn't really want. Okay, fair enough. Now, all of my needles move out to D position after the carriage pass, right? So that's an automatic thing. So I'm going to move this first needle closest to the carriage back to B position. I don't want that one to knit. I want it to slip. And you can see how, especially because we went from red to blue. Actually, I guess that doesn't really go on top there. So the needles that were in B position, they still have red on them from the previous row. They don't have blue from this row. So anyways. And this, okay. Okay, so this time every needle knit. So we take our every other needle pusher, and this time we're pushing the needles back to B position. Actually, we will be for all of the next rows. Okay, so now we're only going to knit every other again. It just won't be as obvious this time because push that first one back, because we always want to slip that first needle. Okay. Push every other needle back. All right. So we are going to continue to do this until, so we have 36 stitches on the heel. It's 36 stitches across. So that means we're going to do 36 rows. And we're going to continue where we slip the first stitch when we're going to the left. And we slip every other stitch when we're going towards the right. Okay? So I'm stopping because I probably speed this up. Okay, so this next part it has been inserted into the video because for some reason I did not properly record turning the heel, and it's a pretty critical part of this, so it needs to be shown, and it's also the most confusing. So you can see I've made a swatch. I've replicated the heel flap. We have all of our slip stitches. That's what makes that that ribbed effect on the outside, is the slip stitches on the inside. It also makes a thicker heel, so there's that. Okay, so how we turn the heel is we are going to, on this first carriage pass, we are going to knit the entire left half, and then we're going to knit this stitch. We're going to put two together, and we're going to knit one more. So how we do that on the knitting machine, because it would be much easier if you were doing it by hand, right? So knit one, two together, knit one. Okay, so we use our two-prong transfer tool, and we're going to pick up the stitches from needles R3 and R4. We pick those up and we transfer them over one. Okay, so this way we have, so this is our first half to here. This is our knit one, our knit two together, our knit one. All right. So pull those out. Well, you don't have to pull that empty one out. You're going to skip that one. And everything else gets slipped, so you pull it back to your B position. Okay. Now don't forget, on each pass, all of the needles are going to be sent back out to our D position, which is fine. We just deal with it. I don't know if there's a way to have them stay in B position. I'll figure it out as I go. Okay, so you can see we've slipped, so we can go ahead and put those needles back in B position. Okay, And yes, we have an empty needle, and it's going to stay empty for a minute. So now on the other side, we want to replicate that. So we want to go to L3 and L4. Pick those stitches up and transfer over one. Okay. And these are all going to be slipped, so I'm going to go ahead and push those back. So now how that looks in the instructions is you slip this first stitch, okay, knit knit 2 together, knit 1. And how it should look on your knitting bed if you've done it right. So empty needle is 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? So the fourth needle on each side of the bed is empty. We slip the first stitch. We've done our 2 together. We go across. Okay. So this is where you want whatever transfer tool you have that can transfer the most stitches in one go, because now we're going to deal with these empty needles. Okay, so I'm just going to make sure all my latches are open. I'm going to be really upset if I do all this and then when I go to edit the video, I find out that somehow or other I didn't turn the microphone on. I cannot even tell you how many times I've done that. So I did order from Amazon today. A set of 2 transfer tools that can transfer 10 stitches at a time. So I'm kind of looking forward to getting that. So that my transfers are a little faster. Okay, so I've taken a needle out of work on each side. So I have, I started with 36 needles in work. Now I'll be down to 34. Okay, so for this next row, I want to slip the first stitch, okay, and you can't see it so much on that side, but you can kind of see on this side, see how there's a little bit of a gap, okay? So I kind of forget what I was saying because, you know, my cat, I had to go feed her because cats don't wait, okay? So we slipped the first stitch. That was the last stitch knit on our last pass. We knit 4 and then 2 together and then knit 1, okay? So that means, yes, so we're going to pick up these 2 stitches. So now we're on R4 and R5. We've moved over 1, okay, so that gives us our, we slipped 1, knit 4, knit 2 together, knit 1, okay, and we slip the remainder of the row. Okay, and it's faster, like if you look, there's always kind of like a gap. See how there's just more of a space there? And so when you do your knit 2 together, it closes that, it closes the gap up here and moves it over 1. Okay, so we slip our first stitch from the last row, okay, and we go over, and I'm just gonna pull these in, and we take our 2-prong transfer tool, okay, and we move these stitches over 1. So we push the rest of the row into so we slip those stitches, okay. We want to knit these ones, and if we've done it right, we can check because our empty needle should always be in the same position, right? So this is our empty needle, so 1, 2, 3, 4 to center. Here's our other empty needle, so 1, 2, 3, 4 to center. So we know we have it right. So we keep going along like this. You do your 2 rows and you make sure they match, and then you use your transfer tool to close that gap. Push all these back just to make it easier. So we close the gap and we take another needle out of work. Like we fill the empty needle, I guess, would be more correct. I don't know. So same thing on this side. Pick up as many stitches as we can with whatever we have for transfer tools. me take this stitch out of work. So we've taken another stitch out of work on each side, okay? So we start again the same way, okay? Our last needle knit gets put into slip position, and then I'm going to push these back, and you can see we have this gap here. So we're going to pick up these 2 stitches, pull those out, so we knit them, and we go across. Okay, so I'm going to keep doing that until I get to the end, and then I will show you how the heel looks. Okay, so that is the heel turned, and you know, if I had recorded it properly when I was doing the whole sock, you would have seen the sock down here. Anyways, I started off with 36 stitches on my upper bed for the heel. Like, the heel flap is 36 stitches wide, and I end up with 20 stitches after I do all of my transfers, slips, and whatnot. Okay, so I'm just going to I'm going to go back to normal knitting and just knit a few rows, just so I can knit it off, and then you can have a closer look. Okay, and then take the yarn out, so we'll knit off. Hold it from the bottom so I don't drop the weights on the floor. Okay, so just taking the weights off. Okay, so this would be the outside of your heel. Okay, and you can see how it's shaped as a heel. So this is the wrong side, and you can see how those slipped stitches, they give like an extra, almost like an extra layer. Now, if only I could figure out how to do that on the ball of my foot, because that's where my socks always wear out. I've never really had the back of my heel wear out, but it will still be like nice and cushiony. And I think my Sew As You Go slippers, you could probably use this technique on the bottom of them to make like a double layer slipper, which I will probably try at some point. Okay, so yeah, so that's how you turn the heel. I hope my explanation was good, because I really did struggle to figure out the instructions for this. So I hope this was helpful. Okay, so another piece of the video that is missing is, once you are finished turning the heel, you have to rehang the stitches. Okay, so I do that with a circular needle. If your preference is to use waste yarn, I would caution you just to look at how the stitches wind up when they're rehung, so that you can account for that. So what basically happens is you take all of your instep stitches, which are on your ribbon bed, off onto your circular needle or your waste yarn, but you're going to divide those. So half of those are going to end up on your main bed, and half will end up on your ribbon bed. And then from there, you're going to pick up these side stitches on your heel flap, right? So you're going to pick all those stitches up on each bed, and then so your sock heel would be facing this way, and then you are going to transfer half of your heel stitches to your main bed and half to your lower bed. So each bed will have half of the instep or the top of your foot. It will have the side of the heel flap, and it will have half of the heel stitches. Okay? And when you're done, you want to end up starting your first row. Once everything is rehung, you're going to want to start on the right hand side. So, just so that you're aware, but the part of the video where I put the stitches on my circular needle is missing. I like to put a stitch marker at the halfway mark on both the instep or the top of the foot and the heel, just so that I know. Okay? Okay, so I have the first half of my instep is hung, and I have, because I still have my carriage on slip, I use that function to bring the carriage back over to the left, mainly because I want to switch back to my self-striping yarn. So that means that I'm going to have to continue the row along the side stitches that I'm going to hang from my heel flap. Okay, so I'm going to be hanging my side stitches from the heel flap and half of these stitches, right? So let's get started. Okay. So when you slip the stitches, it makes a nice chain, so you can see where they are to pick them up. Okay, should have opened these latches first. So I'm going to slip these stitches and knit these. Okay, so I am going to have a little bit of a hole there to fill in. Looks like that's fine. I think what I'm going to do so I'm going to pick up this purl bump right here, and I'm going to knit it together into that stitch on the next round, and that's probably going to close up the hole on that side. Okay, so now the river side, which is more difficult. And now I'm bringing up my rubber bed. I've hung as many weights as I can. The first the sides of the heel flap for the first few rows, they don't really want to go down between the beds, mainly because they're a little bit thicker. So you just gotta kind of keep working them. I have a split stitch there and I'm leaving it. Okay, so we're switching back to circular knitting. So we put the left part button back in, turned our dial back to normal. Get that needle out of the way. And, oh, yeah, let's put the, okay. So the two carriages are connected again, and we're gonna go across. I would like to, if I can get it. It's just I know there's a bit of a hole here where it transitions from so I'm trying to pick up one of these kind of like pearl bumps. Just that. And then okay. So I'm just going to pull it over and hang it on that needle and hope that that closes up the hole. Okay, here we go. And it looks like they all knitted. Okay. And I forgot to put my row counter to 0. So I'm going to put it to 1. Push these down a little bit as I can. And okay, so here is where it gets a little bit fun. So R2 is your magic needle, and we're going to do a whole bunch of transfers for this sock. So we're going to take the 3 needles next to R2, and we're going to bring them over. Okay, so now R2 has 2 stitches, and we're going to bring all the rest of them over. Okay, so we continue on with our circular knitting, and the way it goes is we do one round without doing any decreases. So you knit one row, no decreases, then you do your decreases. So you decrease every other row. And so that row of knitting was my decrease. So I go again. And then once again, I'm going to transfer everything over to I'm going to double up my stitches on R2 and transfer everything over. And you just keep going like that until you are down to your original number of stitches. So in my case, 36. So basically I am going to decrease until from these needles over have been taken out of work. Okay, so that's how we do that. And I'm going to stop talking because I will either speed this part up or cut it out. I don't know, whichever. Okay, so I've just done my last transfer and I'm back down to the number of stitches I originally cast on. So my row count has reached 38. I'm not going to reset it. I'm just going to continue knitting circular until I've knit the correct number of rows for the foot of my sock. Okay, for my foot, my sock length is 144 on the row count, so it is half of that in rows, whatever that is. Okay, so I'm going to knit the foot of my sock. 144 rows on the row counter. So it's actually half of that for rows, but so I'm back at the center back of my heel. Okay, and it's time to start decreasing for the toe. Now, the problem is if I start decreasing from the sides, as I normally would, is that this is the center back, center front. You would have your decreases all on the top of your toe in the middle and the bottom of your toe in the middle. If you're okay with that, then proceed with your decreases. Your other option is to cast off, whether onto a circular needle or waste yarn, and hand knit your toe, or you can cast off and rehang the sock so that you can do your decreases on the machine. So I think this time I'm going to cast off onto waste yarn, and I'm going to rehang the sock so that I can do my toe on the machine. Normally I cast off onto a needle, but I'm just going to do, I'm going to cast off onto waste yarn this time. Now I'm going to start doing my decreases for my toe. And through trial and error, I've kind of, well, anyways, where's the heel on the sock? Okay. So my heel is at the back bed, so the back bed is the bottom of my foot. And I don't know, I'm going to make this right foot sock. And you'll kind of see what I mean in a minute. Okay, so I pick up 3 stitches with my transfer tool and I move them over one. You could do the double transfer tool instead if you don't want to use the 3-prong transfer tool, but I kind of want the 3-prong. Okay, so both sides of the bed, I pick up my outermost stitches and move them over one, and take the empty needle out of work, otherwise the machine will try to knit it. Okay, so I'm going to do 2 carriage passes. Okay, so assume my big toe is going to be on this side of the sock. So we're going to leave this side alone for this one and just do the transfers on the outside side. Okay. Okay, take that empty needle out of work and do 2 passes. So this time I'm going to do both sides. Almost dropped a stitch. I think I've had quite enough drop stitches for now. I don't really need to be dropping any more. Okay, I'm going to just tug that down. Okay, so this time I've decreased by 4 stitches. So I'm just going to keep doing it this way until, like, one row I decrease both sides, the next row I only decrease one side, and I'll keep going until I'm down to 12 stitches on each bed. Yeah. Oops. Don't think I'm supposed to. Nothing like losing track of what you're doing. Okay. I'm going to intentionally break the pattern here because I need to decrease 4 more stitches. So I'm going to decrease both sides for this last row. Do I have a pattern? No. I just arbitrarily made that decision. So okay, so this is it as far as knitting. Now I just have to graft my toe closed. Okay, so I did my 48 rows, which brought me to 96 on my row counter. And then I did 1 extra carriage pass because I wanted my carriage on the left. So I've switched my yarn because I want to do a solid heel, right? And I'm not going to need my ribber for the next little bit, so I've decoupled it from my main bed, my main carriage, and I'm going to drop my ribber bed just a little bit, okay? And I'm actually going to change, instead of the ribber arm that joins the 2 carriages, I'm going to go back to my normal carriage for knitting the heel. Just because sometimes you get a better result that way. Okay, so I have that done, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to push in both part buttons on my carriage so it slips in both directions. And yes, I know if you're using a Singer, you don't have part buttons. I promise at a later date I will do a video just for Singers. So anyway, let's get started. I'm also going to change the knob on my carriage to KC2. One of these days I should see if it slips in normal knit. Anyway, so now what's going to happen is any needle that I leave pull you up a bit so you can see. So this is B position, right? And normally that's the position that knits. But for this part, these stitches, any needle that's in B position is not going to knit. It's going to slip, okay? And I always want, for every pass, I'm going to want the needle closest to the carriage to always slip. And I'm going to take my every other needle pusher, and this is a Singer one, so I have to start out with it lifted a little bit because brother needles have taller butts than Singer needles do. Okay, so I'm going to bring all of these needles out to D position. Okay, so basically far enough for them to go through. See, there's a guide here and a guide here, so you want them to go between that. And then these ones stay in B position. Oh, shit. I'm sitting here and I'm wondering why I have an extra needle, and it's because I forgot to decrease off my selvage before I knitted my circular. Can I fix it or do I have to frog it? No, I have to frog it. There's no other way. Shit!